the power of your presence. Pour your spirit out. Pour your spirit out. Y'all can be seated.
Remind me if I forget. All right. So, like I said, we're kind of starting some different things, some different habits here. So as you were coming in, some of you may not have seen it because, one, you weren't looking for it, and two, there's a mass of people coming in. But what we're going to be doing each night each youth night, we're actually going to be providing you some notes to take if you wish, but paper for you to follow along and stuff that you'll be taking back to your small group. Now, some of you didn't grab it, and don't feel bad, but what we're going to do right fast, if you are a middle schooler and you didn't grab a paper, just raise your hand real quick. And keep it up there. All right, cool. So someone's going to be coming around to give you a paper right fast. So while she's doing that, I'm going to set up something over here. All right. Very good. Hey, if you are not a middle schooler, like Josh who's holding his hand up, you're a high schooler, dude. Put your hand down. High school. So if you are a high schooler and you don't have paper, wait just a second. We'll get you to raise your hand. You're doing great. All right. There we go. All right. If you've already received your paper, look at your person beside you and say, hey, I got one. There you go. All right. If you can hear me say, what? Hear me say, yeah. Hear me go, shh. Kelly, we do have a few more over here that don't have papers. I know you have like one paper left. All right, cool. Y'all, we have more than 70 middle schoolers here, so well done. Just go ahead and put your hand down. You'll get one in a little bit. We'll have them for you at the end. If you're a high schooler and you did not get a paper, just raise your hand real fast. There you go. Cool. No shame. You didn't know beforehand. I didn't send out a reminder about it. There you go. A little bit higher though. She's not that tall. She needs to be able to see your hand. There you go. Cool. It's hot up here. There we go. Yes. That's the hope. All right. So if you can hear me say whoop. If you can hear me say whoop, whoop. If you can hear me go shh. Awesome. All right, so we are starting a new series tonight, and that series, if you haven't been paying attention, is called Catalyst. Okay, now, some of you are very familiar with what this word means. Some of you are scared because you don't like science class. But don't worry. We're not gonna have a pop quiz. I'm not gonna ask you what you know about it. But we are gonna take a quick look at what it means, what catalyst means, what that means. So we are going to do a science experiment that I did try once, and we'll see how it works, okay? So a lot of you probably know, I got a lot of side talking, your paper doesn't block the sound. Just want you to know, holding the paper up doesn't block the sound. That's for everybody. Just so you know, when you hold the paper up to talk, I still hear you. It's like covering the mic and hoping, anyway. So, all right, I didn't call any names. You know who you are. All right, so help me out real quick. So oil and water, do they mix or not? They don't mix, that's right. So, I said oil. Wait, real quick poll. How many in the room call it oil? How many use two syllables to say oil? Okay, just seeing who was wrong. Okay. All right. So, controversy starting at the beginning. All right. All right, let's look back up here. My grandmother is rolling over in her grave going, I raised you better. All right, so what we got here is we got some oil and some water. And as you said properly, oil and water don't mix. Okay? I'm going to need y'all to get over it. All right, so what we got here, we're going to put some food coloring in here. Okay? It's quite fun. This is actually like very, very therapeutic, watching it fall down. All right, so very satisfying. Okay, now, for those of you not paying attention and don't know what's going on, so I just dropped in food coloring. It's going to go down, and it's going to take a minute for it to change what's the color down here. For this to turn blue, it's going to take a little while unless we add a catalyst to it, unless we add something to make the change happen faster. Now, what I have here is an Alka-Seltzer tablet. You know what it is. I'm already showing my level of intelligence with oil. All right, so if we want this to go faster and be done before, say, midnight, we can add a catalyst to it. So, for example, drop it in. And so it's going to start. Ooh, exciting, isn't it? This is how you make your at-home lava lamp with your parents' permission. Just to throw that out there. Now, focus up. So, it was taking a minute for this to start. It was taking a little bit for it to go. But then we added a catalyst, and it made it speed up. It made the change happen faster, right? Another catalyst that we're going to be experiencing tonight is whenever we're done with service, whenever we're done with this portion, and you head off to go to your small groups, we're going to stack chairs. Now, if we left all these chairs left for one person to stack, it would take that person probably around 30 minutes-ish, right, Owen? Yeah, around 30 minutes, right? But what's going to be cool is we are going to add a catalyst to make that process happen less than a minute. And that catalyst is all going to be you. Whenever we finish, I'll remind you to stack chairs, and you'll all start helping, and you'll be a part. So, what is a catalyst? This is a catalyst, okay? A catalyst, focus. A catalyst is something that creates change or speeds up a change that's already happening. Okay? So a catalyst takes something and starts a change, or it takes that change that's happening and it speeds it up. For the next few weeks, we are going to be talking about what catalysts have to do with our faith. Right? We're going to be talking about what faith even means to begin with. Go back. Could we go back so they can fill it in? This is a new thing. We're getting used to that. Yeah, just hang right there for a second. You're doing great. Right? So, listen up. So when we're not sure what do we think about God, what are some catalysts that can help us find answers or maybe even change our perspective? Right? When we're not sure of whether or not we're growing in our faith, what catalysts out there that could restart or speed up our spiritual growth? What can make that process happen faster? And also, how can we be catalysts to help other people's faith grow? These are the things we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks, okay? We're going to be talking about how we can help in this process, how we can affect that process on ourselves. And it's going to be really important. Don't worry, every week we're not going to have a science experiment, okay? But here's the deal. We're going to be talking a lot about faith. And I think it's important if we're starting to talk about faith that we need to kind of define what faith is. Because faith could mean a set of religious beliefs that we follow. Like you might say that my faith is Christianity. Faith could mean our ongoing relationship with Jesus. You might say something like this. You may say, I want to grow in my faith. Or faith could mean our choice to trust God in a specific circumstance, in something that's happening that's specific to us. You might say, I have faith God will work this out. Well, we're going to be taking a look at a book that's all about faith from the New Testament. It's the book of Hebrews. We listen up over here? We're doing good? Cool. Right, we're going to be taking a look at the book of Hebrews. And this book was written to the Hebrew people who were Christ followers. And it's all about faith. And it covers all these different aspects I just talked to you about, right? Hebrews tells us clearly who Jesus is so that we can better understand faith that Jesus' followers share. All right, now we're going to be taking a look at Hebrews 11, okay? And you could say this book itself that it could be a catalyst for the faith of anyone who reads it, back when it was originally written and all the way to right now, okay? So we're going to take a look. We're going to break it up a little bit. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 through 3, okay? This will be on the screen for you to look as I read. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. Through their faith, the people in the days of old earned a good reputation. By faith, we understand that the entire universe was formed at God's command, that what we now see did not come from anything in something that you can't touch or that you can't hold, right? And is that even a smart thing to do, to have faith in something that you cannot see? Well, we can't see God. We can't just look out and oh, there's God. But we can see the evidence of God, the evidence of how he works. In fact, in this verse, what does he refer to? He looks at creation and he goes, if you look at creation, you're seeing the evidence of God. You're seeing something created into being from nothing, from God. There's evidence out there that we need to be looking for. And in fact, so when we're talking about having faith, we're not actually talking about wild guesses, right? We're not talking about believing in made-up stories from God for no good reason. Like, for example, when I was in high school, I played golf. And when I was playing golf, I was not very good, so I was on the junior varsity team. I was on the B team, and no one cared what the B team did. So we were playing, and me and the other guy I was playing with, we both teed off. And I went out to my ball, but he couldn't find his ball. Rules of golf say you must go back and hit again. Well, I wasn't going back because I'm lazy, okay? But he had to go back, so I'm like, you go ahead. And I was in the middle of the fairway, and he's like, you better move. You better move or I'm going to hit you. And I said, psh, no. I got faith, you ain't going to hit me. What happened? He hit me right in the thigh. Now, did I really have faith? No. That was my way of just a religious way of me saying I don't want to do nothing. I got faith, I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. God's going to protect me. Did I talk to God about it? Not really. Did I have a bruise later? Yes. That's not the faith we're talking about. We're talking about trusting God based on the evidence around us. Maybe sometimes we wish we had more evidence that God exists or that Jesus is who he says he is, but we do have evidence, okay? Now, the evidence that we're going to take a quick look at is not evidence like a science experiment. The evidence we're going to talk about in the next set of verses is not a math formula or something like that. The evidence is actually found through people's experience. It's actually set up, this whole set. Now, we're not going to read through the full thing of Hebrews 4 through 22, but this whole section is talking about people who God was faithful to, people who put their faith in God and God came through. So I'm just going to highlight some of these for you, okay? So, and you may not know any of these names, and that's okay. I'm going to give you a quick story on Abel, of Cain and Abel. This was Adam and Eve's first two kids. Abel, out of faith in God, he gave up his first fruits. He gave up his sacrifice to God, and God found it pleasing, right? It was the first harvest he ever made, like in the history of the world, first harvest he ever made, he gave it over to God. He had faith that God was going to take care of him, that was what God wanted him to do. Enoch had faith. He was somebody who was in the Bible. When they talk about Enoch, they talk about the fact that he pleased God and that he was so close with God that God actually took him up to heaven without him dying. He didn't have to die. Look it up. It's pretty crazy. Noah had faith. He built an ark large enough to hold a whole bunch of animals and to survive rain and a flood, which he hadn't seen before. Right? He built an ark for years. He had faith that what God said was going to happen, and it did. Right? Abraham, if you don't know the story of Abraham was really old. And God said, hey, I want you to get up and I want you to leave and go to a new town, go to a new land. And that was not common. He couldn't hop in the car and take off. He had to go and do something that was not the norm. But God said, I'm going to give you a land. I'm going to give you descendants. And he had faith that he would. Sarah, his wife, was super old. And God said she was going to have a kid. And she was like, no, that ain't going to happen. I'm really old. Like 90s old. She old. And yet God was faithful and she had a kid. Isaac was promised a blessing for future of his sons, Jacob and Esau. Isaac was promised that his descendants would be more numerous than the sand on the seashore. And God took his family. He had faith that would happen, and it did. Right? Joseph. Okay, Joseph. If you went, how many of you were helping with VBS this summer? Right? We talked about Joseph every day. Joseph was almost the youngest of a whole bunch of other brothers. And he did nothing wrong, and he got sold into slavery, and then he got put in prison, and then he got put in prison again. And over 17 years, he had faith that God would bring him through, that God would provide, God would make something good happen. And lo and behold, God was faithful. Okay? So maybe you're familiar with some of those names. Maybe every one of those names is one you've never heard before. That's okay. The reason that they brought this up in Hebrews was because they would have known the names. They would have known the story. They would know the evidence that he was presenting that God is faithful, right? Now, there are more names that they cover, and I encourage you on your own time, go and read Hebrews chapter 11. Read it on your own and read through all the stories that he references, right? The thing that this whole thing is about, they had faith, and their faith produced action, okay? They turned their faith into something they actually did, okay? And whenever we think about our faith, we need to think about, is our faith doing anything in our lives? Like, does what we have faith in causing our actions to be different? They proved their trust to God with their faith that God was going to take care of it, and with their actions. Next set of verses, we're going to read from James chapter 1, verse 22. Now, James, if you don't know where you stand with Jesus and whether you became a leader in the early church, all the people following Jesus, he was a leader in them, in the very beginning. Very straightforward, okay? Right? And he says, it's fine if you want to hear God's word, but that's not the end. It's fine for you to hear what we're talking about at youth, but that's not the end. The way you actually listen is when you get into the do, right? And here's what it is. Faith might start in your head. Faith might start in your heart. But it ends up in your feet. It ends up in you going. It ends up in you doing, right? If your beliefs about God haven't turned into a life actively following God, then your science experiment isn't complete yet. And honestly, that's what a lot of this series is about. We have a lot of us who have faith that isn't active. You hear here, and then you go back out to school, to band, to lacrosse, to whatever you're a part of. I like saying it like lacrosse. Anyway, you go back to whatever you're a part of, and then your faith doesn't show out. You don't act any different, right? Maybe it's whenever you're with your friends online, you don't act any different. That's what we're talking about. We want to give you catalysts for your faith to get moving, right? Faith is a catalyst for action. If you are taking notes, that's the next one, right? Faith is a catalyst for action. It's going to move you to action. Now, whenever I was a kid, some of you may or may not know this about me, I was a preacher's kid. I still am a preacher's kid. My mom's a pastor. And whenever I was little, we started a new church. We were part of kind of a church plant. And one thing about church plants is church plants are typically, unless they're helped out by somebody else, they're poor. They don't have a lot of money. And we did not. We had around 20 or 30 people. We met. We worshiped Jesus. We served our community. And we were renting this place that was little. It was a small little place. And it cost $25 a month. And we were struggling as a church to pay $25 a month to have the place. And about this time, a building pops up that is a big building. That's an old big building. Used to be a theater, a black and white theater, like a soundless theater that is that old. Came up for sale for $50,000. And we would drive by, and my mom would say to us boys in the back, she'd go, "God's going to give us that building." And we were like, "Yes, Mom," because that's what you say to Mom. "Yes, Mom." But we really felt like, "No, Mom." That's where we knew, even as kids, we could barely make the rent of $25 a month. $50,000, we ain't going to be able to do that. And God said, "We're going to pray for that." God said that. My mom said that because God was saying, "You're going to get that building." And so we started praying, even though we didn't believe it. We started praying. And lo and behold, people started donating money. Not people within our church, people outside of our church started donating money. And more money came in, and more money came in, and more money came in. And then we got to a point where that we were like, man, maybe God is going to do this. I don't know. And so they go to the bank, and they find out the bank, how much do we have to have as a down payment so we can get the loan and all that? And they gave us the amount, but we were short. And as if on cue, the next week we received an anonymous payment, came in through the mail, that was enough to get us to the point to get the loan. And we were able to have the building. If you go on the trip this summer, the middle school trip this summer, we are going to be going to that building. That's where our mission trip is going to be. As a kid, I saw the faith of my mom who said, God has just told me that we're going to be able to get this building. And then we started moving. We started going. People started giving. It started happening. Faith is always a catalyst for action. Things are going to happen whenever we start having faith. We are going to start to grow when we start having faith. So here's what I want to do, because I'm going long and everyone knows it. No matter where you're at, there are a few steps you can take. Okay? There's a few steps that we can take to help with our faith and let faith be a catalyst in our lives. First one is this: collect the evidence. Okay? Remember, you may not have all the answers now. There are plenty of answers I still have no answer to, questions I have no answer to, right? But the evidence you wish for, the trust in God, you got to start looking around for it. Where have you seen God working? Maybe you need to talk with your parents about, hey, where have you seen God working? Maybe you need to look at some history of the church. Where has God been working? All right? You might want to look to the scripture. See, okay, how did God work in the Bible? How did he work in these different stories that God brought all together to make his word, right? You want to look at your own experiences with God, right? You want to see what God has done for you, times you've prayed and God has answered. And then look at the stories of others. So that's the first part. Look for evidence. We're going to work on our faith, make faith our catalyst. We got to look for evidence. Second one is this: we got to hear what God says, okay? When you believe God can be trusted, following God's lead becomes a lot easier. We have to believe what God says, right? If you've ever watched the Indiana Jones movie, the third one, which should have been the last one, but whatever, money in Hollywood. So third one, there's a part where he comes to the part, there's this huge pass. He cannot jump it. It's way too big. But this little booklet says he's got to take a step of faith. All right, and this is for the adults, because how many of y'all have seen The Last Crusade? I feel there's hope for America. Okay, good. So he takes a moment, he's there, and the thing says, you got to take the step of faith. And so at this point, he goes, okay, I trust my dad. I trust it. And he puts his foot out and he steps out. And the platform is actually just painted to look like the bottom. And so he doesn't go, ah, right? He lives, okay? Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie, but it's been out since the 80s, so tough luck, right? So when we believe, we hear what God says, we actually know what he says, it's going to be a lot easier to take steps of faith. And the last part is this: do what God says. So you hear it. It's kind of like with your parents, right? Your parents say you need to clean your room. If you hear it, but don't do it, what good was hearing it, right? It's like, preach, right? So if you hear it, you read it, he says, okay, God says, love one another as I have loved you. Okay, I heard it. Now I got to do it when I go to school with that person who picks on me and I don't like them and they don't like me. Or that person you think, I enjoy picking on them, I don't want to stop, right? No, we hear it, we got to do it. All right, so here's my last question for you, and then we're going to pray and we're going to let you out. Okay? What action are you going to take to help you grow in your faith? Now, you don't have to answer this right now on your paper. The question's there for you to take with you. What action are you going to take to help you grow in your faith? You're going to talk about it more in small groups, okay? But that is the question, because faith is a catalyst for action. We can't have faith. Our faith shows out when we do. Okay? All right. Hey, we're going to pray. And then when I pray, you're going to help stack chairs. And then you're going to go to small groups. Ready? God, thank you for today. God, I pray that you help us to not only seek out evidence, but that you help us to hear it and you help us to do it. In your name, Lord Jesus, I pray. Amen. All right, stack your chair, no more than 10.